Hello, everybody, and welcome to our market update for the 11th of March, 2026. Glad to have you with us. It was really, really nice to see a lot of you in the market chat today. Those sessions are getting better and better. We're getting more and more people joining. It makes me very, very happy. Let's get to the business of the day. When we left off, the markets were sort of flirting with that break-even level. And on the NASDAQ, you can see, or I'm looking at the Qs where I always like to start, really almost a completely flat day, a 0.01% of that downside. We did try to get above yesterday's high, could not. We also did not get below yesterday's low. So an inside bar, excuse me, an inside bar here. Not bad. I do like, and I mentioned this before, I do like that support at the 150-day simple moving average. When I look back on it, and as I've been doing a little bit more back testing, that 150-day simple moving average certainly does have some relevance as, especially as we're trying to find support, trying to find direction. And you can see we're almost smack dab in the middle of the area where I've got that all-time high there on the bottom of my ribbon here. And my opinion has not changed. I still think we're going to test these levels at 587 first before we test the all-time highs. We go over to SPY, it's starting to look similar, although we've only had one cut through the 150-day. The trend on the chandelier exit or the 3 ATR has certainly turned now, and it's more bearish than it was back here. So this one here, very, very similar look, as you probably have noticed, to the NASDAQ. So for me, I'm looking at this level, watching this level carefully. This one a little bit less so because I know are we closer here, 675? Yeah, we're actually right in the middle. So we're a little closer here at 657, but well, we can say we're right in the middle here. So no direction for me to do anything long or short for a swing trade for day trade, as we were talking with Stephen and some of the other members that trade on a daily time frame or trade on an intraday time frame, there are opportunities in here, especially if you were trading on Monday and you caught that reversal. A really, really great opportunity to make some money. For me, predominantly a swing trader, I need a little bit more direction here. IWM, I suspect, is going to be the same. So this has become a bit of a boring market for me from an equities perspective. Dow. And there's that 150-day. It's not a coincidence that all four major uh, indices are finding support at that 150-day. So if we break the levy here on the 150-day and we all break it together, this will be a better indicator for me that I think we are in a market that will likely be bearish rather than bullish. Now, coming up next Friday, it's the 20th of March. That is options expiry, and I think it's quad witching because you've got futures, you've got index futures, etc., all expiring on the same day. And that is one of the bigger expiries that happens throughout the year. So March, June, September, December. Once that expiry passes. So when we open up the markets again on the 23rd of March, I think I think you're going to get a little bit more volatility. And when I say volatility, I think there's going to be a bit more downside pressure here. We've got the Fed announcement, which I should not present any surprises coming up just prior to the option expiry. But I'm looking at that first week after OPEX in March to give me a little bit more direction on where the markets are. In my personal trading, I'm still predominantly long. I do have some SQQQ for some downside protection, but that's expiring. Those options are expiring in March, so I'll need to roll them forward because I still want to have that hedge on. I still like gold. I still like silver. I was talking about my NTR position, which I did get a pretty decent fill on. So I did sell the $90 expiry, $90 strike for Jan 2027. I sold that for 610. It was trading at 520 to 650 and I got 610. I was quite happy with that. And because this trade is not broken, and I still think we can go higher, I did want to bank some profit. So when I purchased it, it was $3 for that expiry, sold for 610. So I'm up 310 on it. And I ended up buying the 100 strike, which cost me $3.70. So now I'm in the 100 strike for a net cost, beg your pardon, for a net cost of 70 cents. So this is almost a free trade here for me. Not quite, but close enough. And if this thing keeps going as I think it will, or even if there's a bit of a I beg your pardon, even if there is a bit of a pullback and then we keep going, we should continue to make money on that trade. And as movement happens in this particular security, there are always options here to hedge, to change, to roll, to close, to sell against, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll keep you posted on those. Bitcoin, I noticed something interesting about Bitcoin. We were talking about a rising channel, and I think we may be in a rising channel here. So if I take, so remember we were in this wedge here. Now if I take this here, take another trend line here. So I think we might be in a rising channel here. So you know me, I don't like to take trades, long trades below the ribbon or even in the ribbon. I want the underlying to show me its hand by saying, yes, okay, the worst is actually behind us instead of me trying to guess if the worst is behind us. But in this case, resistance for me would be right around 74, 75, and then down to the downside at 66 or so. This is close enough. We can maybe move this down a little bit. And you can see there is that ATR level that has been immensely helpful to me in my personal trading over the last 10 to 12 months or so. So this is what I'm noticing here on Bitcoin. Over to gold. And we talked a lot about what we think gold is going to be doing in this in this environment that could become hyperinflationary. There's nothing wrong with gold. I'm continuing to hold my XGD. As I mentioned, I am holding it with some downside protection. I have sold calls against it as well. Those calls that I've sold against it are actually doing quite well because of this sideways action. Every day that this thing doesn't go anywhere, my position gains a little bit because of the theta decay. So that's how I'm playing XGD. We look at SLV, and this has also been profitable. Even though the stock hasn't really done a whole lot, it's the selling of these calls at the $100 strike where the implied volatility was high, where now the IV has settled as we've had this sideways action, so that short call is starting to make money. I'm not adding to the position here until I'm above the ATR, which could happen as early as tomorrow. So I'll look for that and see if that actually happens. And if we take a look at, we had talked about path after hours earnings, I don't think it actually did a whole lot. So there are the result. And this really was a big disappointment in terms of it didn't really do anything, move up or down. So this is one of the ones that's being watched because of the whole rise of the agentic AI uh, infrastructure and how this would be impacted. It doesn't look like it's impacted one way or another. If I go to the big movers of the day, I bet Oracle is going to show up as Oracle was not, it wasn't the top two when I looked earlier, but NUAI, very, very volatile. Not a bad stock if you're doing this for a shorter time frame. Caesar, I think the news here was that they were in takeover talks, and that's exactly what it is. So $34 a share offered, and oh, I didn't realize it was Icon that was bidding 33. So Caesar's been a nice move here. Hims we had talked about, they tied up again with Novo, this time in a way that looks like it's beneficial for everybody. Red Cat, we've talked about this one, the drone maker, and this is in the context of what's happening in Iran. And speaking of what's happening in Iran, let's finish off with where we are with crude futures. And I was telling you I like that USO 9106 call debit spread for about 1050 or so. I think it moved up to about 1150 before market close. The spreads are wide. this is a hard trade. You're getting so much news. It's like trying to drink out of a fire hose. You get news that says, "Hey, we're coming to a resolution." You got another comment from the same side saying we're not even close to finishing here. Then you've got news that says, Iran is expecting $200 oil. I'm skeptical of anything that I'm reading. I'm looking at what's happening on the chart here. I'm seeing where buying is coming in. You can see this is the cumulative volume delta here. You can see that significant volume that came in on Friday and then the big thrust up, which didn't last long, but it did get up to 119 from there. This seems like it's been a nothing kind of day here, but if I had to choose a side, I'd be long, and I'm showing my long position through something like NTR or something like NAT, the shippers. And you can see this, and my thanks to our friend Richard, because it was on this day on the market chat that we had where I had the $6 call and the price was exactly at 6 when we were in the market chat. And I ended up selling shares, the exact number of shares as the delta on the call option against it. And for every call option I had, sold 50 shares against, and those 50 shares now are up 77 cents, about $35 and change, 38.50 if my math is correct. Whereas the loss on the call option has been less than that. So the hedge has not only worked, it's worked so well that it's mitigating all of the losses from the position that I had on the call option. So thanks to Richard for that. But going back to oil, as I said, there's so much news that's coming out, and this was my worry when we were here, is that there's an announcement that, okay, there's a war, the situation has been resolved, however you want to classify it, and the price sort of collapses, which is exactly what happened. But I still think there's a little bit more volatility here left in crude oil. And I'm trading this to the upside. I'm not trading this to a reversion to the mean just yet. Uh, there was other news. So it's an interesting push-pull situation. I'll just take a minute to explain what I think is happening. It's an interesting push and pull situation in that when the price of oil goes up, there's a risk of inflation, there's a risk of the cost of living going up, and administration generally doesn't do well when cost of living is going up and there's an election coming up. And people sometimes use that, and as they should, to vote, to show their disapproval or show their opinion in terms of what they think is happening or what kind of job the administration is doing. So I think the price will stabilize, but at this point, I still think this is something to in this case, I'm still long. I'm not long oil, as I mentioned. I'm long NTR, and this was a roll today, and there's a bit of a breakout happening here, and NAT, which again, nothing for me to do here. I've got a nice little hedge on. If this recovers, that's great. If it doesn't recover, I'll still end up with a profitable position here. So lots of undercurrent here. Everything on the surface may look still, but there's lots happening under the surface, and always keep an eye on that stuff there. That's it for me. Back on Friday with our next market chat. Vince will be back. Vince will be back with an update tomorrow. In the meantime, we wish you profitable trading, the very best of health. We'll see you on Friday.